Hi, everybody. Al Bernstein here with another one of our editions of Big Time Boxing. And on this show, we get to interview many of the best personalities in the sport of boxing. And as part of that, often we get to talk about the people that chronicle the sport. And nobody chronicles it any better than our guest on this show. He is, in fact, someone who just won an award for the best long form feature done by a boxing writer from the Boxing Writers Association of America. He writes for Boxing Scene. He has been one of the best boxing writers for decades. And I'm thrilled to have him on the show, Mr. Lance Pugmire. Hi, Lance. How are you?
Great, Al. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And I wanted to have you on because we closed out a eventful weekend in boxing, and I wanted to kind of spin that forward a little bit. First, a general comment or a general question. So this past weekend, of course, for 2 days on Friday and Saturday, the world ended because the two cards were not very good, and boxing was dead, buried, and it was never coming back, and no one would ever watch it again.
Again.
or so it appeared on social media. And then things changed dramatically on Sunday night. Does it ever surprise you the nature of how boxing is perceived by not just fans, but sometimes pundits, that the reaction is always black or white? Finding the gray areas seems almost impossible, doesn't it?
Yes, I remember actually when I first started covering the sport on a major league level for the LA Times. I think the story that led Sports Illustrated was Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather on the cover saying that this will be the sport that saves boxing because boxing was dying back then. And
Yeah.
look, it's sustained my career for, basically 20 years since. So it is rather amusing to have all these extremes at play. Obviously, there was a lot of disappointment about those first two cards. But like you said, I mean, the Sunday night card was magnificent in Las Vegas.
Yeah, let's start out with the Sunday night. It was the quite a crowning moment overall. So in that fight, of course, as people know, Naoya Inoue got up off the canvas after being knocked down with a tremendous left hook by Ramon Cardenas, and persevered to get a knockout victory of his own. And how important, because of the nature of, again, talking about boxing fans, their obsession with Inoue fighting in America. This is, I think, his fourth fight in America. How important is it for him to get that kind of dramatic win on American soil? Does it matter?
I think it does. I mean, I understand completely with the concept, and Inoue has mentioned this himself, that he doesn't really need to leave Japan, because when you can sell out the Tokyo Dome with 55,000 people, obviously you're a draw, a significant draw, and you're making a lot of money. But I do think that there is just so much more potential for him going global. Ultimately, he's going to be fighting. He said he's interested in coming back here again after this show. He's come here. He's going to be going to Saudi Arabia, and maybe he'll do some other things throughout the world. But he's got some major fights going back to Japan against a very talented fighter in MJ Akhmadalov in September. And then in 2026, in a way, even throughout the date of basically saying May 2026, he'll fight the undefeated, incredible bantamweight champion Juto Nakatani. So he's really going into the teeth of his schedule right now, and I think it was a pure genius move to start that whole run, coming here to the U.S. and fighting a tough as nails Ramon Cardenas, who gave an effort that was beyond everyone's expectations.
Yeah, we'll get to Ramon Cardenas in 1 second because I want to ask about him as well. But with Inoue, so what they did do, and it was in your article as you talked to the people involved, Bobby Arum and others involved with Inoue, it seems like they're eschewing a move up to 126 right now, thinking that maybe fighting Nick Ball or doing that or going up might not be the thing to jam in right in the middle here. So continuing at 122 with, of course, Akhmadaliev, who is a true 122 pounder, and Nakatani, who's moving up in weight, but that's such an amazing fight that, it'll resonate globally. So I guess they calculated that 126 not the thing for now, right?
Yeah, he said, look, it wasn't the question that I asked in the news conference was not meant to insult him at all, but it's just like, hey, as you look at this moment of where you are, having been knocked down twice, recently, because Luis Neri knocked him down as well. Is it really in your best interest? And maybe it had to do with the fact that Espinoza was fought in the co-main, a 6'1" Rafael Espinoza. It's like, it's too much, isn't it? Too much, and that's what I was asking him. Especially when you consider, Al, and you know this, can you imagine a showdown between Inoue and Bam Rodriguez, who's right now at 115 pounds, but is a dynamo and can ultimately, make that weight and come up? I think that the wealth of fights that is there for Inoue is more than enough. And this is not any kind of dodge at all on his part.
No.
To be able to engage with some, amazing fighters.
I agree. To move up to 126, where they're good fighters, but it's not, you're not desperate to do that. And he's moved up. He's been in 4 weight classes, which is pretty staggering, starting at 108 pounds and moving up all the way to 122. And as you point out, there are so many matches that are available to him. Now, speaking of things being available, Ramon Cardenas, who was a solid fighter. He was 26-1, ranked number 1 by the IBF. We know rankings don't always correlate to how good you are. He had been a solid fighter, had been seen on Pro Box TV several times, and looked like a very solid fighter. And I said going in on a video that Ramon Cardenas is a good fighter, which he is. He showed us he's more than that. And it wasn't just that he was a quote-unquote game opponent. He fought with skill, power, and some guile as well.
Absolutely. The smarts that he showed. And really, when he's got those gloves up, you're like, oh no, is this going to be another fight like Claudia and Pacquiao? And, rightfully so. You can understand that because Inoue is just so tremendously powerful. But when he set that trap and he landed that big shot that knocked down Inoue, you're like, okay, we've got to fight now. And it was compelling theater for as long as it lasted. It was great stuff. I think Cardenas gave a great account of himself, and the future for him is bright. The owner of Boxing Scene is a gentleman, Gary Jonas, who also owns Pro Box TV. So we were talking before the fight. I said, do you think your guy can do it? And he's like, well, I've got a horseshoe at my butt, still from Lamont Roach Jr. doing so well against Gervonta Davis. So I'm hoping that it remains in this fight, and it did. Even in defeat, Cardenas has the ability now. He got a very quick invitation. Samson Lukowicz, who manages Cardenas, told me to go, that he can. He's invited to go to Japan. All 4 118-pound champions are Japanese guys, and he's talking about moving down to 118. So. Cardenas won, even though he did take the loss on Sunday night.
Yeah, very, very good point. And I know there was even talk that Mr. Honda from Japan was saying to him, hey, come over here. We'll pay you a bunch of money and you can fight over here. Because obviously the Japanese fans who appreciate great efforts and great boxing probably, got a kick out of the way he competed against Inoue. So both those men elevated their futures. Maybe not exactly the case with some of the other fighters that fought this weekend. The Friday night card in New York was layered with intrigue because of the much debate about the location of the fight, the way it was set up, the kind of secluded way in which the setup was done so that nobody else could see, and it was a small group of people in there, and it was set in Times Square, which was an interesting proposition. Some criticized it, some thought it was interesting and unique, and they had 3 fights on the card. And I want to point out that going into this boxing weekend, every single card in the main event had a big favorite and an underdog, right? Everyone. And so, and even some of the undercards looked really good, and the Sunday undercard did produce. But there were some undercard fights that we thought were going to be pretty competitive. Friday night did not turn out to be very competitive, obviously. All three fights were decision fights and astonishingly, two of the fights on the card broke the record or were in the top 5 of fights that, according to CompuBox, had the fewest number of punches thrown. The odds against that are almost astronomical. That would happen in one card. Among all those fighters, well, let's take them one by one. Let's first talk about Ryan Garcia, who, of course, lost in the main event. First fight after the Haney fight, first fight in which, he had been accused or found to have used performance-enhancing drugs, presumably didn't use them for this fight, gave a flat effort.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can, I think a lot of people are very quick to make that conclusion that you had Osterine in the system for the last fight and you didn't have it for this fight. I think there were some other things going on with Ryan Garcia as well. We've got to remember, he started training with Eddie Reynoso with Canelo Alvarez, and he really enjoyed that situation and was having a good time there. And Eddie Reynoso had to deal with Canelo, who was going to be fighting over in Saudi Arabia and needed to go over there early. So Eddie Reynoso communicated to Ryan Garcia, look, we're not going to be able to do this camp the way that we should. So Ryan was forced to, pick up and rejoin Derek James, who he used before the last fight with Devin Haney. That was going on. I think that Ryan obviously was not in the crazed mode that he was last time around when he was posting all those nutso things on social media, and he just seemed to be a more subdued version of himself. And then you throw that you throw everything like that on top of the situation where they did put him in a chain link fenced arena with about 300 people inside it, draped off to where it was almost like he was fighting back in the the COVID era rings. I don't understand why they did it that way. And I think that really took something from Ryan Garcia. And look, Rolly Romero deserves credit. He put on a tremendous performance, landing the knockout and a similar punch that he threw and hurt Ryan in their sparring years ago. And Rolly Romero, I had several interviews with him leading up to the fight, and he kept saying, "I don't know why you guys are making such a big deal about what Ryan Garcia did in the first fight, short of hurting Devin Haney a few times with those knockdown punches. It was literally an even fight. He really did nothing other than land those big left hooks." And I believe that over the course of 12 rounds, that I can show that I'm the better boxer. And he was a man of his word. He did exactly that. And it was so I do think that as much as Garcia went in the tank for this fight, Rolly Romero, it was sort of a coming out party for him to really show that, hey, I'm very comfortable at welterweight. I'm a talented boxer in my own right, and I can crack as well.
Yeah, well, we'll see with Romero. I am not a giant Rolly Romero fan in terms of his potential, but you are absolutely correct. He performed well in this fight, and reasonably well enough to get the victory. So for Garcia, of course, he made statements pushing forward. I'm happy to fight Rolly Romero again, or I'll be happy to do the Haney fight. Given Haney's performance in winning, which some people criticized against Ramirez, he was very timid in the number of punches he threw, and that performance did not win rave reviews. Given that, is there any appetite, do you think, for the Garcia-Haney fight to go forward?
I don't think there is right now. I texted Oscar de la Hoya almost immediately after the fight was over, and I wanted to get his response on, hey, is this fight still on?
Yeah.
And his word that he said to me was, it'll happen eventually. It will not happen next. And I think that the ultimate person who's going to have to decide how much they want to invest in this is Turki Al Sheikh from
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia, because does he have that financial interest with Devin Haney as like it was before, especially on the heels of this performance where, you know, look, I spend a lot of time talking to Bill Haney. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and his son and what they've accomplished. But this was a very elusive, unappetizing performance
Yeah.
that boxing fans did not take kindly to, and they were already, let's be honest, criticizing Devin Haney about what happened in
Yeah.
his fight with Ryan Garcia and the way he behaved with filing a lawsuit for battery. So it's going to be interesting to see, because are the investment dollars that were there for Devin Haney in the first place still present?
Yeah, it'll be fascinating looking forward. Now, the one fighter that didn't lower his stock that night, whether he raised it is another question, was Teofimo Lopez, who
Yeah.
performed pretty well. It wasn't a dominant win over Arnold Barboza, but it was a win, and he certainly won the fight. He was close for maybe half the fight, a little bit more, and then Lopez um, ended up controlling the later round. Uh, his future, which could lie in one of two divisions, 140 pounds or 147, is one that leaves him with some opportunities, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Teofimo Lopez, I think he deserves some credit from the standpoint of Arnold Barbosa had looked very strong in defeating the likes of Jose Ramirez
Mm-hmm.
and Jack, going to England and winning
Yeah,
a fight against Jack Catterall. And he made Arnold Barbosa look very human.
yeah.
I think that's due to the work of Teofimo Lopez in the ring and his knowledge of boxing. I mean, plain and simple, he outclassed Arnold
Mm-hmm.
Barbosa. He made him look like another guy. And now Teofimo, like you said, I think he has lifted. He's gone back to the era of, this is the Teofimo Lopez that we know, the guy who defeated Vasily Lomachenko, the guy that defeated Josh Taylor, the guy that was knocking out everyone back in the day. That's the guy we want to see. And when he talks with enthusiasm about moving up in weight and taking on Jaron Boots Ennis, sign me up. I mean, I'd love to see that fight, even more so than someone like Brian Norman Jr., who's a champion, or Mario Barrios, who's a champion in that weight class, fighting Boots Ennis. If it's going to be Teofimo Lopez, that's a fight that I believe would really sell well.
Mm-hmm.
And Teofimo is sometimes he's his own worst enemy, but sometimes as well. And like right now, he's his own best marketing agent, and he does a great job. I think he's a likable kid, and I'm very excited about what lies before him on the heels of this show.
Yeah, the possibility of an Ennis fight, which would be a, a challenge for him, I think, but one that he seems to want to meet, would be a marketable fight, as you point out. And his issue has been consistency, right? We've seen, a good Lopez, an okay Lopez, and not so good, then a good again. So his issue is going to be consistency. But your comments are apt about him. When he's at his best, both inside and outside the ring, he can be a marketable and interesting boxer.
I think, Al, what I was going to say too is, I think that a lot of it has to do, of course, with money, right?
Yeah,
And he's going to want the money. And if he's going to be a quote unquote turkey fighter, he's going to get the money. So I think
yeah,
he's going to be eager and inspired to take those fights. And that's what we want to see from Teofimo.
yeah, exactly. And those matchups. And he has one thing about Teofimo Lopez: he has fought some very tough fighters. His resume is filled with very good fighters that he has faced at several weight classes. So I don't think anybody can honestly criticize him for not fighting good fighters. He's done that for sure.
Yeah.
So and then of course the final element of the weekend was Canelo Alvarez beating William Skull. Moving forward for William Skull, he fought exactly the fight everybody thought he was going to fight. The only one that was feasible for him to deaden the fight, try to win a decision. He didn't do enough offensively, obviously, to do that. Canelo Alvarez looked a little bit like he was stuck in the mud, received criticism. Clearly, this version of Canelo Alvarez is the older version in the twilight of his career. And movement and those kinds of skills have always given him a little bit of difficulty. But what it did do, I think, in some ways, I'm curious to get your opinion, in some odd way, it may have made the Crawford fight even more marketable because people look at Skull and say, well, Crawford's a smaller man than him, but certainly the consummate boxer who does provide some offense with his boxing. So might have made the matchup even more appealing.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, I've heard a lot of conversations about this. I think we saw, as you said, a diminished version of Canelo Alvarez, and he has taken on such a steady flow of guys. We know them: Edgar Berlanga, Jaime Munguia, Jermel Charlo. Before this, of guys that we knew this was a slam dunk Canelo Alvarez victory. And now, look, I think in his mind, he kind of thought when he's agreed to this fight originally, Terrence Crawford would be the same thing because he is a smaller man.
Yeah.
But Terrence Crawford is putting in a lot of time to make himself comfortable at 168 pounds. He knows what he's doing. We know he knows how to fight, and he has significant power. And so, yes, there is absolute reason to be concerned about the ring rust of Terrence Crawford, especially given what we saw from Haney and Garcia this last week. There's proof positive of what it looks like. But this is Terrence Crawford, and I believe that Terrence Crawford is going to bring a performance that is definitely going to threaten Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez deserves to be the favorite in that fight.
Right.
Honestly, if I was walking by the casino book window and someone has a gun to my head, my money's going to be on Terrence Crawford in September, because I just think that he can do so much. And he's, Canelo has been an inspired fighter over the years, but it just seems as if, over the course of the last four dates that he's taken, his greatest inspiration is the cash. And Terrence Crawford, I've talked to him at length about this. His greatest concern is legacy. He wants to be remembered as an all-time great. And if he can walk out of here as a 5-division champion who is a 3-time undisputed champion, I mean, that's the greatest legacy of our lifetime, of our generation, Al, right?
Yeah, it would be a dramatic thing for him to do, especially moving that high up in weight. And it'll be intriguing. And your points are well taken. The Crawford has beaten ring rust before because he doesn't fight very often. I mean, it was like Floyd Mayweather for that. There was a long period there where before he signed that last deal where he fought like once a year, if that, and always performed well, right? He'd be off for 2 years and then come back, and there he was, back again. Now, the Madrimov fight was a pretty close fight, and Crawford did not dominate him. And some people look at it and say, well, he had the 154-pounder gave him a little bit of trouble. But obviously, Terrence Crawford is not going to knock Canelo out. That would be very unlikely. But the idea that he can win a decision against him is hardly off the table, as you point out. And it'll be interesting to see. And I hope nobody puts a gun to your head and makes you make a bet on it, right? I don't want to see that. But, whether you make one or not, that's of course your decision. Hey, there's a good question. Here's an interesting question. It just occurred to me to ask this.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want. Like, I've never bet on a fight I was announcing. I don't bet on boxing that much anyway. I've never bet on a fight I'm announcing because I feel it would be inappropriate. How often do you wager on boxing?
Oh, very minimally. Very early in my career, there was a fight. I won't say which one it was, but it was super early.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd spent so much time with the guys. I'm like, if I can bet on it, I'm going to bet on it because I know so much.
Yeah, exactly.
I did it, but it ended up like affecting my attention on the fight.
Yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with this.
No.
I won the bet, but I'm like, I don't like this. This is not a good thing. So I found myself being so distracted by the consequences of my bet that I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore. So,
yeah, it's funny. I've never really asked anybody that. I mean, because if you're covering for the press, it's the same thing as announcing the fight in basically, and the only difference is if you're writing about it, like I might be sitting there and I'd have angst over the fact that the guy I bet on is getting beaten badly, it would be even different than if you're sitting there and covering it. But it's intriguing.
Exactly.
Some members of the media do like to wager,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
obviously, and it's their right to do so. But
There's
we
some
don't know
great
anybody
stories.
that would wager on a fight, though, right?
Yeah, there's some great stories about one of my friends in the business made a huge wager on Evander Holyfield to defeat Mike Tyson in the
Wow.
first meeting, and I think he said something along the lines of it paid for one of his children's first year of college. So hey, let's be honest, writers get paid crap, right? So can we do something
You
to
know what?
sustain our income?
Good for him. Yes, good for him. And
Yeah,
that extra knowledge, it is funny because when you're covering boxing and you have a little extra knowledge about things, or you may have some insight, what happens is sometimes, once in a while, the odds makers don't get it right.
yeah,
That is and the rare occasions when I put bets on fights, if I see a fight that I'm not doing, that I feel like, boy, they didn't get these odds right, I want to at least take a chance on that. Once in a blue moon, I'll do that. And here's a funny story. I went to
yeah,
Bally's to do it once, and I went up to the window, and a bunch of people saw me, and I wagered on. They did. It was a heavyweight fight. I can't remember the fight. They really did not quite have it right. Well, went up and did the bet. The guy who was a friend of mine, who was running the Bally Sportsbook, called me several days after that, and he said, "Could I ask a favor?" He said, "When you want to do that, could you just call me and come around the back and not do it at the window?" Apparently, a bunch of people saw me do it, and it literally changed their,
oh my god,
there was enough people that it made a difference. And he said, don't, they think so. Well, it turned out I did win the bet, but which, not always the case. But he's just sneak around the side so that
so
they don't see
funny.
it. But yeah, intriguing.
Yes.
Lance, I so much appreciate you taking time to visit with us and look ahead. When is your next? You, of course, participate on the ppv.com
Yeah.
for the big pay-per-views when they show the fight and have you and Jim Lampley and Dan Canobio on there talking about the fights to fans textually. When's the next one of those you're going to do?
Yeah, I think I was talking to one of the ppv.com guys on Friday, actually. And, congratulations to Jim Lampley for making the jump over to the zone now. So our loss is their gain. I'm so happy to have him back calling the fights audibly. And I know the crowd and the fans really love that. It looks like we're going to get the July 19th card that's going to be in Las Vegas. I know Manny Pacquiao still has to win his congressional seat, his Senate seat in the Philippines, but he's hoping to fight on that card against Mario Barrios at age 46 for a welterweight title.
Wow.
And I believe that card will also include a 154-pound title defense by the unified champion Sebastian Fundora, rematch against Tim Tszyu. So that'll be one hell of a pay-per-view card. And yes, thank you so much for mentioning that.
Yeah,
Can't wait to talk to everyone on ppv.com.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's a great experience. And they're going to be, that's in July in Las Vegas, you said?
July 19th right now is where they're aiming.
All right. Well, that'll be fun. It's always fun to see you participate in that. And it was fun to see Jim back on the DAZN fight, on the fight. And I guess he's going to do more of those, huh?
I hope so. Yes. I mean, it worked out. He was very enthused about it. He's got his new book out. Things are going great for Jim, and he deserves all of the success that he can have. Such a great guy and such an inspiration to me.
That's great. It was fun to listen to him. Actually, he worked with my old partner, Antonio Tarver, who was on the show. I enjoyed working with Antonio at Showtime for sure. Lance, thank you so much. Congratulations, by the way, on your award as well. It's not hardly the first one you've won. You've received many, many writing awards and many from the Boxing Writers Association, but I'm sure it never gets old, right?
Oh, for sure. It's my privilege. And I consider all of them, just such an honor because the talent that's out there in our industry is quite high. So it's a very high praise, and I really am honored.
All right. Well, everybody should go check out all of Lance's articles on Boxing Scene. They are excellent. And watch him on the next ppv.com, which might be in July, or don't watch him, but you'll see his comments on the fight. So that'll be definitely worth looking at. Lance, take care. Good to see you again.
Anytime, Al. We'll see you out in Vegas in July.
All righty. So that is Lance Pugmire, and we're going to see you next time here on Big Time Boxing.